Hello and welcome to the Helm December 11th, 2026 developer meeting. My name is Robert. I'll be your host. This is a CNCF project. It covers under the CNCF guidelines and it's recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, fall off and watch it now. And let's get started. Actually, give it a minute because there is absolutely nothing in the agenda. So don't everyone jump in there all at once. By the way, I'm coming up from there for the past 2 weeks. That's fine, Scott. Or not giving you a hard time. I know you guys are. Everyone's life's happening, work's happening.
Make an announcement while everyone's doing that.
Please do.
I'll make two announcements. First, hey, Helm 4.0.2 and 3.19.3 were both released yesterday on schedule for the second Wednesday releases that are out there. One caveat we discovered, or somebody pointed out to me, I should say, they tracked me down in Slack to point out we weren't building with the latest Go because we missed one place in our build scripts that says check for latest. So we used the previous patch version, which actually had a CVE in it. So fixes have been merged to the dev v3 and main branches already this morning. We should throw into the discussion of whether we should cut another patch release on both of those to fix it or not. We can discuss that, just, a rebuild of the same ones on this, that kind of thing.
My immediate gut response is let's do it just because we
So
know.
let's start into the discussion.
Yeah.
Because then the other thing that I have is we've got open votes. We got a bunch of open votes going, and people have not been mostly voting for these things. And so we need to start hounding people to vote, or maybe they intentionally did not vote. But one vote has passed, and that is Mr. Terry Howe. And it passed a while ago. Terry, my request of you here is do a pull request to the owner's file to move you from triage to maintainers, and then just poke me in it.
Thanks.
So congratulations, Terry.
I cry. I'm so proud of him.
Yes, that vote has passed. There's other votes ongoing. I need to find a moment between meetings to raise them up again because I'm sure they're lost in email somewhere, where we need to deal with those things. So there are more votes. All right, gentlemen. Those were the two things that I had. I did not look. Has stuff been filled in? I'll shut up. Whoever's running the show. Robert,
All right,
it's all
that's
yours.
me. That's me. Well, discussions have not been updated to discuss how we want to handle the CVE. So maybe we can do that now. Matt, you discussed whether we amend the current releases or pop it or increment again for increment the patch version for this update. I don't have a dog in this fight, so whatever's easier.
Yeah, normally when we do it, we cut a brand new patch release, especially since we have to bring the configuration over for the CI runs. It just actually makes it easier. Since we're actually not making any source changes to Helm itself, it doesn't actually change the module itself. It's actually just the build. I haven't actually looked to see if our script replaces them if you re-upload them, because I don't think we've ever done that. We always just cut a new patch release rather than upload in place to replace. I don't think we've ever done that. Or if we did, it was so long ago. I don't know if the scripts support that.
Matt, do you want to take point on this one? Or do you not have cycles? How do you want to handle this one?
I'm looking at my cycles.
I don't mind doing it. Or whoever wants to. We've got a few folks who can.
Do you want to pair, Scott? Because this is probably an easy one, because it's probably just creating a new tag and pushing. I also need to get my PGP key up to date, so this will be a good opportunity to get my...
Yeah, and if you want, I can do the
account,
cherry pick real quick. So all you have to do is pull the branches, cut a new tag on it, the release 4.0 and the release 3.19 ones. And that's it. That cherry pick will be very, very easy, so I can do that.
So Matt will do the cherry pick, and then you, Scott, and George will peer up and knock it out.
I suppose the V4 and V3 release presumably have this.
Correct.
Yep. Yeah.
Sounds good. And just to be clear, incrementing the patch. I think that, well, that would be my vote just because. Yeah.
Increment the patch. Just cut a new patch, add a new tag to it, new commit, new tag, one tag later, CI change. Stupid simple, and it's done.
Yeah. And then in terms of we'll simply just say it's a security patch.
Or say it's the Go runtime. Don't say, because then people want to know the CVE. So just say this was a build because it used an older Go runtime that had a no CVE in it, and this patches it by using the latest revision of Go. You can just put something like that in there, and that's enough.
Disambiguate to make it clear that it was not a Helm CVE.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any more discussions? It sounds like a clear path forward. Right. If not, we have a guest. Oh, sorry. Scott.
Quick one. I should have put it in the doc, and I guess I still can. But it was, do we have any current? I know there is a PR that Evans has been working on to operationalize the API side for Charts v3 anyway, not to actually bring, fully realize all the new changes that want to be added. Is there anything that we need to discuss about that? And I'm only asking because we're all here.
Is this the fixed handle OCI digest algorithm that he did, or create API version flag that he did? Okay, so it's this one. Give me a second as this loads. I will put this into chat. I have not personally looked at this, but maybe we could flag it for the other maintainers to take a moment. Okay.
I know Matt had some, or Farina had some earlier comments, and I just wanted to, I don't know, in case it was any value of speaking any of them, or if they're already all resolved to everyone's satisfaction. I was just curious because I'm very excited to get cracking with it.
I see that. So I'll let you know. I won't have a chance to re-review it till later next week, mostly because I got suckered into reviewing things for the CFP, staring at you, Robert. And I've got to finish that up, and then I'll have a chance to review some stuff. But I don't remember what my comments were on this. I'd reviewed enough things that it's now escaped my mind.
Okay, all good.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Scott. On that note, this is just a beginning, so this just adds the Helm create command, an ability to create chat v3, but the actual work would be bubbling all those APIs so that they are available for consumption, essentially moving them, making sure that, from CLI, you can basically create a chat v3 all the way so that you can install it. I'm not sure whether there has been a plan around that, so I'm just going with what we have. There's been implementation that's internal, and what I'll be doing is sort of moving that up so that it's available for consumption by someone who's who creates a chat v3. You can create that from the CLI. You can use the SDK. One question that I've been battling with is whether we need a release v2 object. So I have some code that does that. I haven't raised a PR, mostly because of discussion. But I'm wondering whether that's something we want to consider, not changing much, but whether that's something.
I'm strongly in favor of, Helm has no internal, has a small internal concept of a release, but a lot of the release logic, which I think is distinct to a chart's like a release is like an instantation of a chart. That's not very strongly represented in the Helm's code base. There's a type, but the chart logic manages releases, and I'd be in favor of separating that out.
Yeah, what we probably need to do, and I try to do a little bit of this when I separated things, was to make it possible, is to have packages under charts for the actions. Like, what do you do? Your CRUD operations, create, update, delete, those kinds of things, for those different things, and then have your actions package branch off to those for each of the different types of charts that it's interacting with. We also have a release type that's a release v1. And we probably need a release V2 before we get into the new type, just so older versions of Helm can't see something it doesn't know how to work with. And so we can have a release V2 type that the new chart type is installed as. And so we'll have to deal with that as well, because one of the things you have to work with is if somebody picks up, say, Helm V3, they shouldn't see any kinds of chart or releases that they don't know how to work with. They shouldn't be able to screw that up somehow, right? So that's why we've got different, that's why just like charts have API versions, releases have API versions as well of that record stored in the cluster. And we can use that to kind of disambiguate things, store things properly, make changes to that object as well.
Yeah, completely agree out there. I think that because that's the direction I was taking. The follow-up question to that is rolling back. So my research, I don't see any risk around that because we roll back the actual templated release object manifests. But do you see are there any gotchas there in, say you have a release V1 and you install a chart V2 and then you want to roll back to the previous chart because of, you just want to roll back.
There are going to be dragons there, and I don't know what they are off the top of my head.
Okay.
I would take the approach that we shouldn't support this initially. Like if you want to use a V3 chart and you've currently got a V3 chart installed or that same, you need a new release. And then maybe later we can figure out how to do the forward and back.
Yeah.
Once it's stable type thing.
That makes sense
Yeah.
to me too. So Evans, if you wouldn't mind just adding it to, I made a comment that if you wouldn't mind, or in the comment section, if you wouldn't mind adding a comment explaining the rationale that Matt had just mentioned, and maybe you could even add what you just said as a to-do. If you don't mind doing that.
And it may be you switch to the new V3 release or the new release object, API version V2 release object, and then we never switch back from that. So even if you roll back to an older version of it, a Helm V3 chart, maybe it can handle that with a release V2 object. So it's just once you migrate to Helm 4, you're on Helm 4 release objects and it doesn't go back. There may be something there, but I would expect that there needs to be some exploring, some testing, some playing around just to figure out what's going on. I don't think anybody's worked through that well enough to be able to answer. So it's going to require some experimentation and finding the rough edges.
Awesome. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that the PR that Evans opened up specifically adds that experimental flag or the gate. And so if I know
we need that.
Yeah, exactly. We need it basically in order to do anything with the API in an experimental way, it can't, we have to have not everything in internal. I get George's point about putting certain things in. But I just wanted to note that we should make sure that we're very clear in our use of that experimental flag that those functions are not guaranteed to be backwards compatible as we're working on them, right?
I think we should try and formalize this a little better, as in if we had a /experimental instead of /package, what's that? And we have this we had this for plugins as well. There's internal, which is great because now things are private. But if we want to make it accessible outside of Helm, but in a limited or beta fashion, then we can't without doing this backwards compatibility dance. And I do think it's important to be able to release it to SDK to consumers without saying it's rock solid and production ready.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what the experimental flag is for. It's just that, we just need to somehow make that very clear, or that part of the contract very clear.
How does the flag work for SDK?
Yeah, that's the question. I mean, I think implicitly, right now it's implicit that this is opt-in.
So what you can do that with properties, right? So we can set a certain property, but with the SDK, you've got to remember that if it's in internal, an SDK user cannot access it. And that means we can change APIs, we can do all kinds of stuff in there. So when it comes to something like the common loader, we can set up, well, how do you set a property in there? But yeah, it basically
Hmm.
comes down to how do we go ahead and enable that in there,
Yes.
um, right in the common loader. And that those are the kinds of areas where you have to deal with it is just there. But the actual direct packages, they're not going to go be playing with,
Yeah.
and they're marked as experimental.
So, George, were you suggesting having an experimental package, like literally a directory experimental and all the code? Okay, cool. I see where you're
I
going
mean,
with that.
well, with the experimental package, everything inside of internal that we're experimenting with, you can consider an experimental package already. So for the loader, I mean, you could do it with a flag where whoever's running it in the environment, they run their own SDK based app. They have to opt into it and they have to
Oh,
set the environment variable, and then they have access to those features. Otherwise, they don't. So if I go pull it in, say Flux pulls it in, it'll just do the GA version of charts we have today. The experimental ones won't work with the flag. Then if they set that environment variable, now their application can start doing those new versions of those things, and they could even test it that way and see what happens.
Should we use a build flag for this actually for SDK user stuff? And I'm speaking specifically about, Matt, like things that we want people to experiment with on an SDK level so they cannot be an internal. And that way it would not be, this
No,
wouldn't
because
be.
then if you do it with a build flag, then it's still part of the public API because you have to pull it out of internal for them to have direct access to it.
Hmm.
And then therefore you now have a public API, to which case you cannot change that API later, even if the build flag's different. That's the reason to put it in internal, because there we can make API changes and make lots of breaking changes, which we're going to do to the new version of charts. We want to have that freedom. So I don't want to put it in the public API because then we will have to support people on that later. And even if we make those changes, you're going to get people who are upset we made changes along the way. There's going to be all kinds of stuff. And they'll say it's in the public API. Look, it's not an internal. We will have that because even with OCI, when we made changes in OCI early on, we had people who had broken things, came to us for support. We're like, it's experimental, read the docs. Even there, we had it. So part of this comes to the supportability of people. And I would like to keep things separate for now, just so we don't have to support people coming and asking questions or complaining about things when we expect it to be changing and experimental.
So,
Internal leaves it at that.
so my position is we should absolutely do all the development we can in internal. It's just at some point we're going to want to give something to SDK users to play with, and either we had some sort of beta phase, we will release it as experiment. We think it's solid, so it's like Kubernetes beta. We think it's good, but but we don't know because no one's actually given us any feedback.
So for most of these folks, we should have common things that they use, right? If they use the actions today, they can do that. If they use the common loader today, it should load both sides of the charts. We'll probably have a common saver at some point, which saves both ways of charts, right? And it does the proper redirection. If we add those in, then when we slowly enable this, it becomes a no op for them to support it, even as SDK users, because they're using higher level functions that just enabled it and they turned it on.
That's true.
If it works like that, then that's agreeable to me. It's
Yeah.
only if we want to expose some of the internal functionality directly, I guess. If it's all indirect via actions, then sure. I would agree with that position.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also have these sort of accessor interfaces that I think they were added, what you did. So those are the ones that
Yeah.
SDK users would consume. And with
Yeah.
those, agnostic to what version you are on. Yeah, I see where you're going. All right.
All right. All right. So we got some direction on that. Well, let's move on. We have nothing more in discussions. We have a guest on. Andrew, you have a HIP review. Let me enter it here. George, can we go on mute? Because your background is a little loud. Thank you. Andrew, the floor is yours, sir.
Hey, thank you. So this is my first time here. I went to ContribFest at KubeCon and talked with George and Scott about an idea that I had. They suggested that I write up a HIP, and so that's what I'm doing here today. I'm not exactly sure the processes and procedures for all of this. This is my first time here, but yeah, basically the idea was that we have a process where we basically have Helm charts that we want to upgrade for people. We do a Helm chart of Helm charts to release stuff to people. And when we're doing that, a lot of times the applications that we're deploying have like upgrade steps or something like that that need to be executed in the right order based on what versions things are. And so right now today, the way that we do that is we end up using Flux and then do lookups and have that read the current state of the Flux custom resources. I think it would basically be really nice if Helm had a built-in way to go and see what is currently deployed as it's, or rather right before it's doing that rendering. And I mean, that's basically it.
So with Helm, you mean to actually view what in case it's changed. Is that what you're looking for?
So for I can the easiest example I can give is probably like, so as you're deploying, you can check like what your current you have .chart .version. Essentially, the main one that I can think of as a good example would be like .deployed chart .version, so that you can see what the current version on the cluster is, what version you're trying to deploy, and then you could like run pre-hook jobs if you needed to do a migration step there or something like that, so that you can know I'm going from this version of the chart to this version of the chart. That means I need to run this job rather than this other job.
Yeah, and I think in the past, the way we'd always handled this was we said that the logic for this, um, should be not to look at the chart and what's deployed, but look at the application that's deployed and what's versioned inside of that. Because sometimes you'll find people will do things like change tags and change versions, and they do some funny stuff with charts. So some of the assumptions that we make on how people will do things get thrown out. And so the upgrade logic would be look at the application, see what's actually deployed, right? Like look at the schema version in the database rather than look at the chart version that's deployed. Based on the schema version, say, okay, well, that's that version. I need to migrate to this other version from that one by knowing the actual schema version rather than saying it's this version of the chart that's deployed, because then you're looking at the application itself rather than the packaging around the application. And people do lots of funny things with packaging. Um, Even when you get into things like Debian packages and stuff, people do funny things with packaging. And so that's why one of the reasons we didn't look to directly support that before is it was just look at this. Now I wonder, you know, the chart version itself, though, I think's available inside the metadata already, isn't it?
The one that you are attempting to deploy, not the deployed one, I think, right?
Oh, the previous version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, that would
generally
be
why
right.
I'm in favor of this, because it's somewhat of quite a small change for Helm. So we do need to think of the implications for how people are going to use it. But in terms of us supporting it, it's just if it's an upgrade, we put the previous release information in the metadata, and then people can
Yeah.
build their logic on top of that.
It seems like no consensus yet on that one, but it's a small change. Do we want to have a follow up for Andrew next week and give maintainers the opportunity to kind of digest, or do you guys feel you can?
Well, I just want to read the proposal,
Okay.
just because the things that come to my mind were uh, which previous release are we talking about? Is it the last successful one? Et cetera. And any, there was a recent fix, around that, for like that HITA made that was really an edge case. But we were able to verify it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's give the maintainers and actually the community at large an opportunity to read, digest, and then we will put feedback within the PR itself for next steps. And then Andrew, if you want to join us next week and see if anyone had cycles to actually look at it, obviously we can take it from there.
Yeah. And think about it if you want to update or comment on it, because it's just the previous release, the previous successful release. What if it's a failed release, right? Do you want to note that it was a failed release, that the last one was? Do you need the status of the release? Does that matter? That kind of detail, because a previous release could be in a number of different states.
Sure.
How
Absolutely.
does that impact it?
Yeah, I will definitely, thank you. I will
Yep.
make some updates to that, and I appreciate your time.
And how
Yeah,
does
and
the
that's a
save?
good call, Scott. Yeah.
Yeah, and how does the configuration for the number of releases saved affect this too? That factors into what Matt was just elaborating on.
Okay.
Okay.
So first, thank you, Andrew, and thank you for showing up, and thank you for the HIP review. Since you're new, we do appreciate new contributors all the time, so we appreciate it. In the interest of time, we have 2 minutes left. I need a moderator for next week. I can if nobody else is up.
I should be here.
All right, George, it's all you.
I can be your understudy just in case.
Oh, that's cute. I love it. Who wants to do notes? Karen, are you going to be here, or does one of us need to?
I'll be here. I can do notes.
All right, Joe has notes. For issue and PR review, if you can put my name.
Same for this week. I actually wasn't able to last week, even though I thought I was.
And I will be here next week with bells on. I'm sure Matt, Scott, Will, and George.
Yeah, you can add me as well.
Okay, thank you.
Have been busy the last couple of weeks, but I want to circle back on some PR review and
Awesome.
I would be.
Well, it was a great call. I want to thank everybody for showing up. Good conversations, and we will adjourn, and we'll see everyone next week.
Thank you. Good day.